My name is Eleanor Vance, I'm 70 years old, and my daughter-in-law tried to murder me at my own retirement party. Before I tell you how her own mother ended up convulsing on my marble floor instead, do me a favor and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I want to see how far this story has traveled. There I was standing in the middle of my living room, the one I'd built with my own two hands, metaphorically speaking. The air was thick with laughter and the clinking of glasses. 30 people, a lifetime of colleagues and friends, were there to celebrate me, to celebrate my success. But my heart wasn't celebrating. It was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My eyes were locked on my daughter-in-law, Jessica, as she weaved through the crowd, a brilliant, predatory smile on her face. In her hand, she held a single flute of champagne. My champagne. She looked like an angel in her white cocktail dress, her blonde hair catching the light. But I had seen her just moments before, standing by the bar, her back to the room. I saw her glance around, a furtive, nervous movement. I saw her pull a small vial from her designer clutch. And I saw her, clear as day, uncap it and empty its contents into that specific glass, the one with the tiny, almost invisible etching of a rose at its base. My favorite glass. The one she knew I always used. Now she was walking towards me, her face a perfect mask of daughterly affection. "Eleanor," she cooed, her voice like honey laced with arsenic. "You must be exhausted. You deserve this." She held out the flute. A sane person would have screamed. A normal person would have slapped it out of her hand, called the police, caused a scene that would have ended the party right then and there. But I've lived 70 years on this earth, and 40 of them were spent in the cutthroat world of corporate tech. You don't survive that long by being normal. You survive by being smarter, calmer, more ruthless than the sharks circling you. I smiled back, a warm, grandmotherly smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Thank you, dear. How thoughtful." My hand was steady as I took the glass from her. The liquid inside sparkled, so innocent, so deadly. I held it, my thumb brushing against the etched rose. How did I end up here? How did the celebration of my life's work turn into a cold-blooded murder attempt by my own family? It all started 2 months ago with 2 words. Offer accepted. I sold my consulting firm, the business I bled and sweat for after my husband passed, for a staggering $40 million. The news hit my family like a lottery win, a lottery they felt they were entitled to. My son Michael insisted on throwing this party. "Mom, you've earned it," he'd said, his eyes wide with an earnestness that always seemed a little too practiced. "Let Jessica handle everything. You just relax." And Jessica, who usually complained if she had to load a dishwasher, suddenly transformed into Martha Stewart overnight. She fussed over flower arrangements, polished silverware, and planned a menu I knew we couldn't afford on their salary. That was the first red flag. Her sudden, suffocating helpfulness felt wrong. It felt like she wasn't just planning a party. She was staging an event. An end-of-life event. Now, back in the present, with the cold glass in my hand, I watched her glide back towards the center of the room. I needed a plan, and I needed it now. My eyes scanned the crowd and landed on her mother, Sharon, standing near the fireplace, looking a little lost. She was fiddling with her purse, a glass of club soda in her other hand. Perfect. I made my way over, my steps measured, my face serene. "Sharon," I said cheerfully, my voice carrying over the din. "It's so wonderful you could come." "Eleanor. Congratulations, you deserve all of this," she said, beaming. "I wanted to make a toast," I said, raising the poison flute slightly. "To family. And especially to your wonderful daughter, for putting all of this together." I leaned in as if to give her a hug, using the moment of closeness to perform the sleight of hand I'd seen a magician do once on a cruise. It was ridiculously simple. As I pulled away, the glass in my hand was her club soda. The champagne flute with the etched rose was now in hers. "Oh, Eleanor, you're too sweet," she said, blushing, completely oblivious. She raised the glass. "To you." I watched her, my breath caught in my throat. She took a large celebratory sip. Then another. She smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. For a terrifying second I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just a paranoid old woman. Then her smile faltered. A confused look crossed her face. "This champagne tastes a little funny," she murmured, looking down at the glass. Her eyes widened, not in joy but in sheer animal terror. The flute slipped from her suddenly limp fingers. It didn't just fall. It seemed to hang in the air for an eternity before shattering on the marble floor. Her scream ripped through the laughter. It was a raw, choked sound that was cut short as she clutched her throat. She crumpled to the floor, her body twitching violently. Chaos erupted. Someone yelled, "Oh my God!" Another screamed, "Call 911." Jessica was frozen, her practiced smile gone, replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. But I didn't move towards Sharon. I couldn't. My feet were rooted to the spot. I took one slow, deliberate step towards my son Michael, who was standing across the room. His face was a sheet of white, his knuckles white where he gripped his own glass. I locked eyes with him, and in that moment the noise, the panic, the screams, it all faded away. There was only the chilling certainty in his eyes. He knew. I opened my mouth to speak. The paramedics were a whirlwind of calm efficiency, a stark contrast to the shrieking panic of my guests. They worked on Sharon, shouting medical terms I didn't understand, their movements precise and urgent. Through it all, I didn't take my eyes off my son. Jessica was hysterical, a full-blown performance of a devastated daughter, her sobs echoing theatrically in the cavernous room. But Michael was different. He was pale, yes, his face a waxy, bloodless mask, but it was the stillness that gave him away. He was a statue in a hurricane, his eyes fixed on the unfolding chaos with a terrifying lack of surprise. As they loaded Sharon onto the gurney, her body limp, Jessica finally looked at him, her mascara-streaked face contorted. It wasn't a look of shared grief or concern. It was a glare, a silent, venomous accusation that screamed, "This is your fault. This wasn't the plan." In that split second, I knew with the certainty of a death sentence. It wasn't just Jessica. My son, my only child, the boy I had raised, was in on it. I insisted on following the ambulance to the hospital. My voice was low, cutting through the noise. "I'm going with her." "Mom, no, you should stay here," Michael said, rushing to my side, his hand hovering near my arm as if he was afraid to touch me. "You've had a shock. It's too much for you. We'll handle it. I'll call you with an update." "She's my friend, Michael." "I'm going," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. I grabbed my purse and keys, my movements deliberate. I brushed past him, and for a moment he looked genuinely panicked, not for Sharon, but for his loss of control over me. The drive to St. Mary's General was a blur. The city lights streaked past my window, neon smears against a dark canvas. My mind, however, was razor-sharp. It was racing, replaying every interaction, every strangely solicitous comment from Jessica, every overly earnest look from Michael over the past few months, the insistence on planning the party, the way Jessica had steered me towards my favorite champagne, the way Michael had drawn me into a conversation on the other side of the room moments before the toast, giving her the perfect window of opportunity. It was all clicking into place with a horrifying, sickening clarity. This wasn't a sudden, desperate act of greed. This was a calculated plot, and I had been the intended victim of a funeral that hadn't happened yet. The hospital waiting room was sterile and cold, smelling of antiseptic and fear. It was a place where life hung in the balance, but for me it felt like a courtroom where my family was on trial. Jessica paced back and forth, her designer heels clicking in anxious, maddening rhythm on the linoleum floor. She was on her phone, her back to me, whispering furiously. "I don't know what went wrong." I heard her hiss. "No, of course she didn't drink it. My mother did." Michael sat hunched in a hard plastic chair, staring at the floor, refusing to look at me. I sat across from them, a silent observer, feeling a chasm open up between us, a gulf so wide I knew it could never be crossed again. The love I felt for my son was shriveling, replaced by something cold and hard. "Mom, please let me take you home," Michael tried again, walking over to me. His voice was a low, pleading murmur, meant only for me. "There's nothing we can do here but wait. This stress isn't good for you." "I'm not leaving," I stated flatly. He reached for my purse on the seat beside me, his movements quick. "Let me just take your phone then, so you're not bothered by calls from worried guests. You need to rest your nerves." His fingers brushed the leather, and I snatched it away, my hand moving with a speed that surprised even me. "Don't touch my things, Michael." The words were quiet, but they carried the weight of a breaking dam. He flinched back as if I'd burned him. His eyes, the same warm brown eyes I'd looked into for 40 years, were filled with something I'd never seen before. Guilt and a flicker of fear. He was afraid of me. Good. He should be. An hour later, a doctor in blue scrubs came out, his face grim. Family of Sharon Peters? Jessica rushed forward, instantly transforming back into the grieving daughter. I'm her daughter. Is she okay? What happened? The doctor looked from her to me, a brief, assessing glance, then back again. She's stable. We had to pump her stomach and administer an antidote. We got to her in time, but it was close. A few more minutes. He let the sentence hang in the air. He paused, looking at his clipboard. The toxicology screen came back. We found a highly concentrated amount of cardiac glycosides in her system, consistent with oleander poisoning. The name hit me like a physical blow. Oleander. The beautiful, deceptively sweet-smelling bushes that lined my own driveway. Poisonous. Deadly. Accessible. Poison. Jessica gasped, her performance kicking back into high gear. She pressed a hand to her chest. But how? She must have eaten something. A bad mushroom. Something from her garden. She's always digging around out there. Ma'am, the doctor said. His voice patient but firm, losing the sympathetic edge it had a moment before. This wasn't an accident. The dosage was massive. It was designed to induce cardiac arrest within the hour. It was intentional. He looked directly at me. As per protocol with an unidentified poison, the police have been notified. They'll want to speak with everyone who was at the party. The room fell silent. The air crackled with unspoken truths. Jessica started sobbing, a raw theatrical sound that grated on my nerves. Michael put a stiff arm around her, but his eyes were on me. I met his gaze, my expression unreadable. I let him see the ice forming in my veins. I let him see that the weak, aging mother he thought he knew was gone. In her place was someone else, someone he had created tonight. Someone he should be very, very afraid of. He knew. He knew I knew. But what I didn't realize at that moment, sitting in that cold, sterile waiting room, was that the poison in the champagne glass was just the opening act. Their real plan, the one they'd been carefully constructing for months, was far more insidious, far more cruel. They didn't just want me dead. They wanted to erase me first. I drove home from the hospital in a daze, the city lights blurring past my window. The house was quiet, the remnants of the party, a few stray napkins, a half-empty glass, looking like artifacts from another lifetime. I walked through the rooms, my own home suddenly feeling alien and unsafe. My mind was a maelstrom, but one thought kept rising to the surface. This was premeditated. Then I started to remember. Little things. Insidious little things I dismissed as my own forgetfulness, the so-called senior moments everyone jokes about. Now they weren't funny. They were terrifying. They were weapons. 2 weeks ago my car keys vanished from the hook by the door. Not misplaced. Vanished. I'd torn the house apart for an hour, my frustration mounting into a frantic panic. I was late for a lunch meeting. Michael and Jessica had stopped by, just to check in. Jessica had found them 30 minutes later, nestled inside a carton of eggs in the refrigerator. "Oh, Eleanor," she'd said with a tinkling, condescending laugh, exchanging a knowing look with Michael. "We've got to keep a better eye on you." I'd felt a flush of hot, deep embarrassment, angry at my own aging mind. Now I saw it for what it was. A staged piece of theater designed to make me doubt my own sanity. A week ago Jessica had called, her voice a symphony of feigned concern. "Eleanor, you missed your dental appointment. Dr. Miller's office called me looking for you. Are you feeling all right?" I had no memory of making an appointment. I checked my calendar, it was blank. Confused and worried, I called the dentist's office. The receptionist was polite but firm. "No, Mrs. Vance, we don't have you down for an appointment today. Or any day this month." When I'd confronted Jessica, she just patted my hand, her expression one of pity. "It's okay, honey. Sometimes we get confused. Don't you worry about it." It was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. She created a problem, watched me panic, then reassured me, all while reinforcing the idea that my mind was failing. Every memory was a small, sharp piece of glass, and now they were all coming together to form a horrifying mosaic. They weren't just planning to kill me. They were building a case. They were meticulously crafting a narrative that I was incompetent, forgetful, losing my mind. The poison was plan A, a swift, clean divorce from my life and my fortune. But they had a plan B, a slow, torturous erosion of my identity. My blood ran cold when I remembered a conversation from just last week. I'd been watering my hydrangeas when my neighbor, Mrs. Gable from next door, had stopped by the fence. She was a kind, sensible woman I'd known for 30 years. "Everything all right, Eleanor?" she'd asked, her brow furrowed with genuine concern. "Of course, Martha. A beautiful day, isn't it? Why do you ask?" She'd hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "Well, it's just. Jessica stopped by yesterday. She brought me some cookies. She seemed so worried about you." "Worried? About what?" "She mentioned you've been having some trouble with your memory lately," Martha said, her voice low. Leaving the stove on, forgetting names, she said she and Michael are looking into getting you some in-home help. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." At the time, I'd been furious with Jessica for discussing my personal life with the neighbors. I'd made a mental note to tell her off for her meddling. Now I felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't gossip. It was a calculated move. She was planting seeds of doubt all over the neighborhood. She was creating a chorus of concerned witnesses who could later testify to my decline. The next morning the doorbell rang. It was Michael, holding a box from my favorite bakery. His face was a study in practiced sorrow. He looked exhausted, like a dutiful son who'd been up all night worrying. The act was almost perfect, except for the flicker of impatience in his eyes. "Mom," he said, stepping inside. "I couldn't sleep. I just keep thinking, what happened to Sharon? What if that had been you?" He set the box of croissants on the counter. "You're all alone here in this big house. And your memory, it's not what it used to be. The keys in the fridge, the missed appointments, we're worried." There it was. The opening salvo of Plan B. He was using their own manufactured incidents as evidence against me. "I'm fine, Michael," I said, my voice dangerously calm. He ignored me, his eyes full of fake sincerity. He pulled a glossy brochure from his jacket pocket and laid it on the table. The cover showed a smiling, silver-haired couple playing golf on a pristine lawn. The title read, "Golden Meadow Estates. A New Chapter in Gracious Living." "Jessica and I have been doing some research," he said, his voice soft and reasonable. "We found this place. It's not a nursing home, Mom, it's a luxury retirement community. It's beautiful. They have doctors on call 24/7, gourmet meals, activities. You'd be safe there. We'd know you were being taken care of. After what happened at the party, we can't risk you being alone." I stared at the brochure. The smiling faces seemed to mock me. They weren't selling safety. They were selling a gilded cage. A place where they could lock me away, monitor my every move and control every visitor. All under the guise of loving care. A place where my confusion could be officially documented by staff, building their case for legal guardianship and full control of my inheritance. Can you believe the audacity? He was using his wife's failed murder attempt as a sales pitch for why I needed to be put away. The sheer breathtaking arrogance of it left me speechless. This was their endgame. If the poison didn't work, they would convince me, and everyone else, that I was too senile to manage my own affairs, too fragile to live on my own. They would have me committed, declared incompetent, and they would get control of everything. And looking at my son's earnest, pleading face, I knew I couldn't let him see the rage that was building inside me. I had to play along. I had to let them think their plan was working. I picked up the brochure, my hand trembling just enough to be convincing. It does look nice," I whispered. The hope that flared in his eyes was the ugliest thing I had ever seen. You won't believe what they had prepared to make sure I never left that place. The moment Michael walked out the door, beaming with the satisfaction of a successful salesman, the mask of the frail, confused old woman dropped. I moved with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. The grief for the son I thought I had was a cold, hard knot in my stomach, but there was no time for mourning. This was war and I was losing. I went straight to my study, unlocked the bottom drawer of my mahogany desk, and pulled out a business card I hadn't looked at in a decade. David Chan and Associates. David had been my corporate lawyer for 20 years. He was sharp, meticulous, and utterly unflappable. He'd navigated me through hostile takeovers and contract disputes with the same calm demeanor. He was a shark, but he was my shark. If anyone could help me navigate this personal hell, it was him. I dialed the number. His assistant recognized my name immediately and put me through. Eleanor. David's calm voice came through the line. I heard about the sale. A brilliant move. Congratulations. I trust the retirement party was a success. The irony was a bitter pill. David, I said, my voice low and urgent. The party was a disaster. I need to see you. Now. It's a matter of life and death. Literally. There was no hesitation, no questioning. That was David. My office. 1 hour. I walked into his high-rise office feeling like a soldier entering a command center. The view of the city skyline was breathtaking, but I saw none of it. I sat across from him in the rich leather chair that had always made me feel powerful, and I laid it all out. The party. The etched glass. The vial. Jessica's face. The oleander. The hospital. And then, the second front of the war, the gaslighting. The keys, the fake appointment, the conversation with Mrs. Gable. I finished with the glossy brochure for Golden Meadow Estates. I told him everything, my voice never wavering. A cold, hard narrative of betrayal. David listened without interruption, his pen occasionally scratching a note on a yellow legal pad. He made a steeple with his fingers, his dark eyes fixed on mine, absorbing every detail. When I finished, the silence in the room was heavy. He didn't offer pity or platitudes. He offered a strategy. Eleanor, he said finally, his voice grave. First, I am so sorry. This is monstrous. Second, we have to move fast and we have to move smart. They've opened a second front, a legal one. If they are trying to build a case for your incompetence, we need to build a stronger one for your absolute soundness of mind. We need to go on the offensive. The knot in my stomach loosened slightly. This was the David I knew. A strategist. A fighter. What's the plan? I asked. He leaned forward, all business. The plan has 3 phases. Phase 1 is defense. We build a fortress around you legally and physically. Phase 2 is intelligence. We find out exactly how deep their financial hole is and what other moves they've made. Phase 3, he paused, a grim smile touching his lips, is the checkmate. We will not just defend, we will dismantle them. Over the next 2 hours we hammered out the details of Phase 1. First, he scheduled an immediate appointment for me with a renowned geriatric psychiatrist, Dr. Lena Hansen. She's the best, David said. She's also a frequent expert witness in court. Her evaluation will be our bedrock. It will be an unimpeachable legal document proving your mental acuity, and it will neuter any attempt they make to question your custody of your own mind. Second, he gave me the number for a high-end security firm run by ex-Mossad agents. Call them this afternoon. Don't get the system from the local company. Get the best. I want cameras visible and hidden, audio recording capabilities, motion sensors, a panic button system linked directly to my office and the police. Your house needs to become Fort Knox by sundown. Third, and most importantly, we address the weapons they were truly after: my will, my salary from the sale, my money. We need to redraft your estate plan immediately, he said, already pulling up files on his computer. We will create an irrevocable trust. It's a complex instrument, but in short, it's a legal vault. Once your assets are in it, no one can touch them, not even with the power of attorney signed under duress. Any divorce from your assets will be on your terms alone. And the inheritance? I asked, my voice tight. We change it, he said simply. Drastically. For a second, the image of a little boy with scraped knees holding my hand flashed in my mind. The boy I had loved unconditionally. I crushed the memory. That boy was gone, replaced by a stranger. Michael's share will be reduced to a modest annual stipend, just enough to live on, but not enough to fund their lifestyle. It will be controlled by the trust, so he can't blow it all. As for Jessica, nothing, I said, the word coming out like a shard of ice. She gets nothing. Done, David said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He printed out a stack of documents. I'll have these messengered over for your signature once they're finalized. This is our shield. As I stood up to leave, I felt a surge of power I hadn't felt since I closed the deal on my company. I was no longer a victim in waiting. I was a CEO planning a counter-takeover. David walked me to the door. One more thing, Eleanor, he said, his hand on my arm, his voice serious. The next part is the hardest. It's up to you. You have to play the part. Be the woman they think you are. Be frail. Be confused. Let them think they're winning. Let them walk right into the trap we're setting. I nodded, a cold smile touching my own lips. I had spent 40 years excelling in a man's world, outmaneuvering executives who saw me as nothing more than a woman. My son and his greedy wife were amateurs. They had no idea what was coming for them. They thought they were dealing with a frail old lady. They were about to find out they had just picked a fight with a queen. The security team was as efficient as David had promised. They swarmed the house in unmarked vans, a quiet professional force. By evening, my home was equipped with a system that would make the Secret Service proud. For the first time since the party, I felt a flicker of safety, a small patch of solid ground in a world that had turned to quicksand. But the real battle wasn't for my house. It was for my life and my sanity, and I knew I couldn't win it alone. The next afternoon, the doorbell rang. On the monitor, I saw a hesitant figure. Sharon, Jessica's mother. Her face was pale and drawn, the after effects of the poison still evident in the dark circles under her eyes. I almost didn't open the door. She was a link to the people who tried to destroy me. She was Jessica's mother. But something in her posture, a kind of broken desperation, made me press the button. She stood awkwardly in my foyer, clutching her purse like a shield. "Eleanor," she began, her voice barely a whisper, thick with shame. I needed to talk to you. I had to get away from the house. Jessica. She won't stop talking about it. I led her to the living room and poured her a cup of tea, my movements calm, my new hidden cameras recording every angle. My mind was on high alert. Was this another trick? Was she here as a scout, sent to gather more evidence of my supposed confusion? She sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands trembling so much she had to set the cup down. Jessica told me I had a bad reaction to my medication, she said, looking up at me, her eyes filled with a terrible dawning realization. But Eleanor, I haven't been on any medication for years. Nothing but a daily vitamin. The police asked me that. It made me think. I kept my face neutral, a mask of compassionate listening. I waited. And I remember something, she continued, her voice gaining a bit of strength, fueled by a rising anger. Just before I fell. The champagne. It tasted bitter. Metallic. Like licking a battery. And I saw her, Eleanor. I saw Jessica at the bar before the toast. She was so shifty, looking over her shoulder. She was doing something with a little bottle. A dropper bottle. My pulse quickened. This was it. Corroboration. From their own family. What kind of bottle? I pressed gently. Like the ones for essential oils, she said, her eyes widening as the memory solidified. Exactly like that. She then told me something that made my blood run cold. For weeks, she's been trying to get me to take some new herbal energy supplement she found online. Said it would help with my arthritis. She even brought a bottle over. It had a dropper just like the one she was holding at the party. I thought it was strange it had no label. I poured it down the sink when she left. We stared at each other, the horrifying truth hanging in the air between us. Jessica hadn't just tried to poison me at the party. She'd been trying to find a way to administer it for weeks, and she had been willing to test it on her own mother. My fortress had just gained a powerful, unimpeachable witness. "There's more," Sharon said, her voice cracking. "She talks about your money all the time. She's obsessed. She complains about their debts, about Michael's failing business. She's always saying how unfair it is that you have so much from your salary, and the sale while they're struggling. How their lives would be so much easier if something happened to you and they got the inheritance." She finally broke down, sobbing into her hands. "A month ago, she borrowed $5,000 from me. She said it was for an emergency car repair." She cried, Eleanor. She was so desperate. But I saw the bank statement by accident. The charge wasn't to a mechanic. Where did the money go? I asked, my mind racing. "It was a single payment to someone named Dr. Alan Peterson," she wept. The memo line just said consulting fee. The name. The final piece of the puzzle. A doctor. A $5,000 consulting fee. This was the weapon for their plan B. When Sharon left, shaky but resolved to cooperate with the police, I felt a grim sense of validation. I wasn't just paranoid. I was in the crosshairs of a meticulously planned conspiracy. I immediately picked up the phone and called the number David had given me for a private investigator. Maria Rodriguez. A no-nonsense voice answered on the first ring. I didn't waste time. I gave her the rundown, my voice cold and precise. Ms. Rodriguez, my name is Eleanor Vance. My lawyer David Chun referred me. I need you to find out everything there is to know about my son, Michael Vance, and his wife, Jessica. Bank accounts, credit cards, loans, investments. Everything. I also need you to find out who Dr. Alan Peterson is, and why my daughter-in-law paid him $5,000 last month. There was a brief pause on the line. Family matters can get messy, Mrs. Vance. Are you sure you want to pull on this thread? I'm sure, I said, my voice hard as steel. Pull on it until it unravels. I want to know every dirty secret, every hidden debt, every single lie. You'll have my report in 48 hours, she said, and the line went dead. As I hung up, I walked to the mirror in the hall and looked at my reflection. I practiced a look of confusion. I let my shoulders slump. I practiced a slight tremble in my hand. I had 2 days to play the role of my life. 2 days to be the frail, frightened, and easily manipulated mother they believed me to be. The stage was set, the actors were in place, and I was about to deliver a performance that would bring down the house. Their house. The next morning, I picked up the phone and dialed Michael's number. I took a few deep, shaky breaths before he answered. Getting into character. I pitched my voice a little higher, a little weaker, infusing it with the tremulous quality of old age and fear. Michael, I said, putting a slight quaver into the word. It's Mom. Mom, are you okay? I was just about to call you. I was worried sick. He lied, his voice a river of false concern. I don't know, I whispered, letting a long pause hang in the air, forcing him to lean into the silence. Michael, I've been thinking all night about what you said about Golden Meadow. I made sure to sound hesitant, defeated, as if the very words were an admission of failure. Maybe you're right. I was so scared last night, all alone in this big house. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. I could practically hear the triumphant grin spreading across his face. The shift in his tone was immediate, from concerned son to victorious predator. Oh, Mom, I'm so glad you're seeing it that way. It's for the best. You'll be so much safer. We can finally stop worrying about you. I'd like to talk about it more, I said. Could we have lunch? At the Oak Room? For old time's sake. The Oak Room was our place. It was where we'd celebrated his college acceptance, his engagement to Jessica, the birth of my granddaughter Chloe. Using it now felt like tainting a sacred memory, dousing it in poison, but it was a necessary sacrifice. It would make my capitulation seem all the more genuine. Of course, Mom. Noon is perfect. I'll make the reservation. I arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes late, making sure to look a little flustered and disheveled. I forgot where I'd parked my car for a moment in the valet line. I let him pull out my chair. I fumbled with my napkin, dropping it on the floor. I was playing the part of a woman whose world was shrinking, who was losing her grip. You look tired, Mom, he said, his eyes scanning my face for signs of weakness, for confirmation that his gaslighting campaign had been a success. I didn't sleep well, I lied, looking down at the menu but not really seeing it. I keep thinking about everything. The business, the money from the sale. It's all too much for me to handle now. Your father always took care of these things, the investments, the taxes. My head just swims when I try to think about it. This was the bait. I was appealing to his ego, to his desire to be the man of the house, the one in control. He took it hook, line, and sinker. That's what I'm here for, Mom, he said, puffing out his chest slightly. You don't have to worry about any of that anymore. I can handle it. During the meal, I accidentally got a detail about my old company's biggest client wrong. He corrected me gently, a smug, patronizing look on his face. No, Mom, remember? We dropped the ASME account in '08. I saw the look he was giving me. It was pity laced with triumph. He was convinced. At one point his phone buzzed. It was Jessica. He answered, turning slightly away from me. Hey, Han, he murmured. Yeah, it's going perfectly. Even better than we thought. Yes, she's buying all of it. I think she's actually relieved. He thought I couldn't hear him. He thought I was too old, too deaf, too distracted. He was wrong. I let a single tear roll down my cheek, a masterpiece of contrived emotion. I called Golden Meadow Estates this morning, I said, my voice thick. They have a corner apartment available, with a view of the garden. But they said there's a waiting list. Another family is interested. They said if I want it, I have to put down the deposit and sign the paperwork by Friday. His eyes lit up. The avarice was so naked, so raw, it almost made me gasp. He was practically salivating. Friday? That's tomorrow. That's no problem at all, Mom. We can get everything settled by then. We'll help you. But the paperwork is so complicated. I fretted, twisting my napkin in my lap until it shredded. And they said it's a requirement for all residents to have a durable power of attorney on file. In case of an emergency. I looked up at him through my fake tears, my eyes wide and pleading like a lost child's. Someone has to be able to manage my finances, make decisions about my custody and care. Michael, I only trust you. You're my son. Would you be willing to do that for me? He reached across the table and clasped my hand in his. His skin was warm, but his touch felt like the cold hand of a mortician. Of course, Mom, he said, his voice dripping with a sincerity so false it was nauseating. Whatever you need, I'll take care of everything. You won't have to worry about a thing ever again. I managed a weak, grateful smile, letting him believe he had me completely under his thumb. I was the helpless little bird, and he was the benevolent hawk, swooping in to protect me. He saw himself as the hero of this story, the savvy son managing his aging mother's massive estate. He had no idea he was just a pawn in my game, a puppet walking himself right into the trap I was laying. He was so busy looking at the $40 million prize at the end of the road. He never thought to look down and see the gaping pit I was digging right at his feet. Friday couldn't come soon enough. The call came on Thursday morning, exactly 47 hours after I'd hired her. The caller ID simply read, M. Rodriguez. I took a deep breath, my hand steady on the receiver, and answered. Eleanor Vance. Mrs. Vance. Maria's voice was crisp, all business. I have my report. I suggest you sit down. I was already sitting in my study, a pen and a legal pad in front of me, but I gripped the arms of my chair anyway. I'm ready, I said. What she told me over the next 20 minutes was worse than anything I could have imagined. My son and his wife weren't just in debt. They were drowning in it. It wasn't a struggle. It was a full-blown 5-alarm financial inferno. Their financial situation is catastrophic, Maria said, her tone devoid of emotion as she read from her file. They have over $150,000 in credit card debt spread across 12 different cards. They're using cash advances from one card to make minimum payments on another. It's a classic death spiral. Based on the interest rates, they're accruing nearly $4,000 a month in interest alone. I felt a dull ache in my chest. I had given them the down payment for that house. I had paid for Chloe's private school tuition, a college fund I topped up every year. Where had all their money gone? Maria answered the unspoken question. I've cross-referenced the credit card statements with their social media. We have a $10,000 ski trip to Aspen, a $15,000 couples trip to a resort in Bali, and monthly charges from Neiman Marcus and Saks Fifth Avenue that average over $5,000. Jessica Vance also has a standing weekly appointment at a high-end spa that costs $800 a session. The sheer, staggering irresponsibility of it was breathtaking. They weren't struggling, they were performing. They were putting on a show of wealth they couldn't possibly afford. Their mortgage has been refinanced 3 times in the last 5 years, Maria continued. They've drained every penny of equity from the house. There's a second mortgage, a home equity line of credit that is now maxed out. They are, for all intents and purposes, insolvent. They're about 2 months away from foreclosure. And Michael's business? I asked, dreading the answer. His architecture firm has been operating at a net loss for the past 24 months. He hasn't landed a major client in 3 years. He's been paying his employees, and himself, with a business line of credit that is now maxed out at $200,000. He's been cooking the books to hide the losses. The man who condescendingly told me I needed a younger mind to handle my finances was a catastrophic failure in his own. But the worst was yet to come. 6 months ago, Maria said, her voice dropping slightly, Jessica Vance took out a life insurance policy on you, Eleanor. My eyes snapped open. What? A $1 million policy. She is listed as the sole beneficiary. She cited insurable interest as your primary caregiver and next of kin, which is thin, but she must have found a company desperate for business. The first premium was paid 6 months ago, using a cash advance from a credit card. The planning for your funeral started long before the party. This wasn't just about the inheritance. It was about a quick, tax-free payout. $1 million. The cold-blooded calculation of it stole my breath. It was their parachute, their escape hatch from the financial ruin they had created. And now for Dr. Alan Peterson, Maria said. Your $5,000 consulting fee. What did you find? I asked, my voice a hoarse whisper. Dr. Peterson is a geriatric psychiatrist. On the surface, he's reputable, but he has a reputation in certain legal circles. He's what we call a hired gun. For the right price, he provides families with the psychiatric evaluations they need to gain legal guardianship over an elderly relative. He specializes in finding early signs of dementia and impaired judgment, where other doctors might see normal aging. I found 3 other cases in the last 5 years where his testimony was the deciding factor in a contested guardianship hearing. In each case, the elderly individual was institutionalized and their assets were turned over to the petitioning family member. He is, in short, a legal assassin. The pieces of the puzzle slammed into place with brutal force. The gaslighting, the forgotten appointments, the whispers to the neighbors. It was all a prelude to this. If I had refused to go to Golden Meadow, if I had fought them on the power of attorney, they would have brought in Dr. Peterson. He would have evaluated me, declared me incompetent, and a judge, faced with a mountain of anecdotal evidence from my worried family and a professional medical opinion, would have handed my life and my fortune over to them. They would have had me locked away, legally and physically. I just sat there, the phone pressed to my ear, the silence stretching. I saw their entire plan, laid out in all its monstrous detail. It wasn't just about the money. It was about control. It was about silencing me, erasing me, taking everything I had ever worked for and claiming it as their own. They wanted to steal my legacy, my independence, and my final years on this earth. Mrs. Vance? Are you still there? Maria's voice cut through the fog. Yes, I said, my own voice sounding distant. Yes, I'm here. Send me the full report. Encrypted. And send a copy to my lawyer, David Chun. I hung up the phone and stared at the wall. The grief I had felt for my son was gone, burned away by a cold, clarifying rage. This wasn't a son making a terrible mistake under the influence of a greedy wife. This was a conspiracy. He was a willing, active participant in a plot to destroy me. They thought they had all their bases covered. The poison, the gaslighting, the hired gun doctor. They thought they were so clever. But they had made one fatal miscalculation. They had forgotten who I was. They had forgotten that I didn't get to where I was by being a victim. They thought they were dealing with a confused old woman. They were about to find out they were dealing with a cornered lioness. And I was about to roar. Friday morning arrived, gray and drizzling, a perfect backdrop for the storm I was about to unleash. At precisely 10 o'clock, my doorbell rang. Through the security monitor, I saw them, Michael and Jessica, standing on my porch, holding a handsome leather briefcase. They were dressed in sharp, expensive business attire, looking like a power couple on their way to close a major business deal. And in a way they were. They just didn't realize they were the ones about to be liquidated. I opened the door, my face a carefully constructed mask of frail anxiety. Oh, thank goodness you're here, I said, my voice trembling slightly as I ushered them in. I was so nervous. I hardly slept. Don't you worry about a thing, Mom, Michael said, giving my shoulder a condescending pat that made my skin crawl. Jessica smiled, a bright, false smile that didn't reach her cold, calculating eyes. We'll walk you through everything, Eleanor. It'll be painless, she purred. Oh, it will be painful, I thought. Just not for me. They spread the documents across my large dining room table like generals laying out battle plans. The sheer volume of paper was designed to be intimidating, to make any elderly person feel overwhelmed and helpless. There was the Golden Meadow Estates residency contract, 100 pages of fine print. There were the financial disclosure forms, asking for every account number, every stock, every last cent of my net worth. And there, placed squarely in the middle, was the durable power of attorney, the key to the kingdom. Okay, let's start with the financial disclosures, Jessica said, clicking open a sleek laptop. She was all business, her tone crisp and efficient. We need to list all your assets so the community can calculate your monthly fees. Let's start with your brokerage accounts. I played my part, feeding them account numbers and investment details I had memorized from a dummy sheet David had prepared. With each multi-million-dollar figure I recited, I could see their greed intensifying. Their breathing grew shallower. Their eyes glittered. They exchanged small, triumphant glances when they thought I wasn't looking, like two children on Christmas morning who couldn't believe the size of the presents under the tree. Jessica's fingers flew across the keyboard, documenting her future plunder. This will be so much easier to manage once it's all consolidated, she murmured, more to herself than to me. We can set up a master account. Finally, we came to the last document. Michael pushed the power of attorney towards me. This is the last one, Mom. It's pretty standard stuff. My lawyer looked it over. It just gives me the authority to handle your financial affairs if you're unable to. I picked it up, pretending to read the dense legalese. The document David had prepared was a perfect forgery of a standard power of attorney. It looked completely official. But the account numbers it granted access to were linked to a single, newly created checking account. The current balance? $1.00. It just seems like so much authority, I said, feigning hesitation. It gives you control over everything. It's just a precaution, Mom, Michael said, his voice smooth as silk. The facility requires it. And honestly, at your age, it's good to have someone younger handling the complicated financial stuff. It will be a relief for you. At my age. That phrase again. The dismissal. The condescension. It was the fuel I needed. I picked up the heavy gold-plated pen from my desk set. My hand trembled, but this time it wasn't an act. It was trembling with anticipation. I uncapped the pen. The scratch of the nib on the paper was the only sound in the room. I signed my name, Eleanor Vance, with a flourish. The moment the pen lifted from the paper, a collective sigh of relief escaped from both of them. It was done. They had won. Great, Michael said, reaching for the document with a greedy hand. Now we just need to get this to the notary, and the promotion to our new life is complete. The doorbell rang, a sharp, piercing sound that made them both jump. Who could that be? Jessica asked, annoyed at the interruption. Did you invite someone else over, Eleanor? No, I said, standing up. I'm not expecting anyone. I walked to the door, my heart pounding a steady, triumphant rhythm. I opened it. Standing on my porch were two people who were definitely not on the guest list. A man and a woman dressed in plain, dark suits. They held up their badges. Mrs. Eleanor Vance? The woman asked, her eyes sharp and intelligent. I'm Detective Miller. This is Detective Sanchez. We're with the City Police Department. We need to ask you a few questions about an incident that occurred here last weekend. From behind me, I heard a sharp intake of breath. Michael appeared at my shoulder, trying to take control. An incident? What's this about, officers? My mother is elderly and has been under a lot of stress. Detective Miller looked past me, her gaze landing on Jessica, who had gone rigid at the dining room table. We're investigating a case of suspected poisoning, the detective said, her voice flat and official. We understand there was a medical emergency here during a party. Jessica shot to her feet. That was my mother, she cried, her voice high and shrill. She had an allergic reaction to her medication. The doctors said so. This is harassment. Actually, ma'am, that's not what the hospital's official toxicology report says, Detective Sanchez interjected, stepping into the foyer. He pulled a small notebook from his jacket. The report confirms the presence of a lethal dose of oleandrin. That's not medication. It's a deadly poison. The color drained from Jessica's face. Michael stared at her, a look of dawning horror on his face, a pathetic attempt to distance himself from her. Furthermore, Detective Miller continued, her eyes never leaving Jessica, We were granted a warrant to test the remaining champagne from the party. The bottle you personally opened, Mrs. Vance, was found to contain the exact same substance. We also found a recently purchased, nearly empty bottle of oleander extract in the trunk of your car, which you used for the divorce from my life. This is insane. Jessica shrieked. Why would I poison my own mother? Detective Miller's expression was unreadable. She pulled another document from a folder she was carrying and placed it on the hall table with a soft thud. That's a good question. Maybe it has something to do with this $1 million life insurance policy you took out on your mother-in-law, Eleanor Vance, 6 months ago. She tapped the paper. Jessica's name was listed in bold, black letters under the word beneficiary. The trap had sprung. Jessica looked like a cornered animal. She whirled to face me, her eyes blazing with pure hatred. You did this. You're old and confused, you're trying to frame me. I met her gaze and for the first time, I let her see the steel behind my eyes. No, Jessica, I said, my voice quiet but carrying through the silent room. I saw you. I saw you put the poison in my glass. I deliberately switched it with your mother's. The truth landed in the room with the force of a physical blow. Michael stumbled back, his hand flying to his mouth. You knew, he stammered, looking at me. I knew everything, I said, turning my gaze to him. I know about the debt. I know about the life insurance. And I know all about your plan to have me declared incompetent. I know about Dr. Alan Peterson. The mention of the doctor's name was the final, devastating blow. Michael collapsed into a chair as if his legs had given out. Jessica lost it completely. She lunged towards me, her hands clawed, a wild scream tearing from her throat. You old bitch. You ruined everything. That inheritance was ours. She never reached me. The detectives were on her in an instant, twisting her arms behind her back, the sharp click of handcuffs echoing in the foyer. As they read her rights, her tirade continued, a stream of curses and threats. But I wasn't listening. I was looking at my son, my broken, pathetic son, who was staring at the power of attorney on the table, the worthless piece of paper that represented the culmination of all his greed and betrayal. The checkmate was complete. After they let a screaming, struggling Jessica out to the squad car, an oppressive silence fell over the house. The only sound was the faint hiss of the drizzle against the windows. It was just me and Michael. He sat at the dining room table, a broken man in a designer suit, staring at the scattered documents that represented the ruin of his life. The power of attorney I'd signed lay near his hand, a mocking testament to his failed coup. He didn't look up for a long time. The confident, condescending man who had walked in an hour ago was gone, replaced by a hollow shell. When he finally did lift his head, his face was crumpled, his eyes red and vacant. Mom, he whispered, the word a ragged, desperate sound. I didn't know about the poison. I swear to God, I didn't know she was going to try to kill you. Didn't you? I asked, my voice devoid of warmth. I walked over to the table and picked up my phone, which had been recording audio for the last hour. I scrolled back to a file Maria Rodriguez had sent me, a recovery of deleted text messages from their cloud-synced account. I turned the screen towards him and pressed play. His own words filled the silent room. A digital ghost come back to haunt him. Jessica's text, sent the night before the party, read, what if she puts up a fight about Golden Meadow? What if she says no? Michael's reply, now echoing in the silent room, was chilling. Don't worry. After the party tomorrow night, she'll be begging us to take care of her. Trust me. I've got it handled. He flinched as if I'd struck him. He couldn't meet my eyes. He stared at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. You knew, I stated, not as a question but as a fact. You might not have known the specific ingredient was oleander. You might not have held the vial yourself. But you knew she was planning to do something to me that night. Something that would scare me, traumatize me, break me into submission so I would be easy to control. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with dry, silent sobs. I thought she was going to stage a break-in or something. He mumbled into his palms. Or hire someone to mug her in the driveway. Something to make you feel unsafe living alone. I never thought murder. A real funeral. You were comfortable with traumatizing your own mother for financial gain, I said. the words falling like chips of ice. You were fine with terrorizing me into signing away my life, just as long as you didn't have to get your own hands dirty with something as messy as poison. Is that it? You just wanted plausible deniability. His silence was his confession. I slid the glossy brochure for Golden Meadow Estates across the table until it stopped in front of him. Then I slid the report from Maria Rodriguez next to it, with the section on Dr. Alan Peterson highlighted in yellow. You weren't just planning to scare me, Michael. You had a contingency plan. A plan to have me declared mentally incompetent. You paid a crooked doctor $5,000 to be your legal assassin. You were going to have your own mother committed, stripped of her rights, her voice, her very identity. You were planning to destroy me, one way or another. He finally looked up, tears streaming down his face, a pathetic caricature of remorse. We were drowning, Mom. The business, the debts, we were so far underwater. I just wanted a way out. I wanted to give Jessica and Chloe the life they deserved. A good life. The life you thought they deserved. I corrected him, my voice cutting through his self-pity. A life built on lies, funded by debt, and ultimately planned on top of my grave. You talk about Chloe. What about her college fund? The one I set up for her? Your credit card statements show you rated it 6 months ago to pay for that trip to Bali. You stole from your own daughter to fund your fantasy life. That struck him harder than anything else. He recoiled, a look of genuine shock on his face. Jessica said she borrowed it from her mother. He stammered. Jessica lies, I said simply. I picked up the power of attorney, the one he believed was his golden ticket. This, I said, dangling it in front of him, gives you authority over a bank account containing exactly $1. It's worthless. His head snapped up, his expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. What? My real assets, I informed him, my voice as cold and clear as a winter morning, are now secured in an irrevocable trust. My lawyer took care of it days ago. The new will, the real one, leaves you a small yearly allowance. Enough to keep you from starving, but not nearly enough to pay for your Mercedes. And if you are convicted of any crime related to this conspiracy, even that disappears. Everything else goes to charity and to Chloe, managed by the trust until she's 30. The last bit of color drained from his face. He stared at me, the full scope of his defeat finally dawning on him. He had lost everything. His wife, his freedom, his reputation, and his inheritance. You destroyed my life, he whispered, his voice hollow. No, Michael, I said, turning and walking away from the table, away from him. You destroyed your own life the moment you decided your mother was worth more dead than alive. I just made sure you couldn't take mine down with you. 3 months have passed. The legal storm has subsided, leaving a strange, quiet calm in its wake. The sensational headlines have faded. The whispers in the neighborhood have died down. My life, which had been turned into a public spectacle of greed and betrayal, is finally my own again. Jessica took a plea deal to avoid a jury trial that the prosecutor promised would put her away for life. She was sentenced to 20 years for attempted murder. With good behavior, she might be out in 15. She will be almost 60 years old. Michael, for his part in the conspiracy to defraud and his clear knowledge of the plot, was convicted on multiple felony charges. His lawyer argued that he was manipulated by his wife, but the text messages and the payments to Dr. Peterson told a different story. He received a sentence of 5 years in a medium security prison. The beautiful house I helped them buy, the symbol of their fraudulent success, was seized by the creditors to pay off a fraction of their mountain of debt. It's all gone, wiped away like a sandcastle in the tide. The person I hear from most is my granddaughter, Chloe. She's only 17, but she has a wisdom far beyond her years, forged in the fire of her parents' destruction. She called me the night after the sentencing, her voice thick with tears, not for them, but for what they had tried to do. Grandma Eleanor, she'd said, I am so sorry. I had no idea. I feel so ashamed. I know, sweetheart. I told her, my own voice gentle. None of this is your fault. You are the innocent one in this tragedy. You carry none of their shame. You are my granddaughter, and I am so proud of you. She's living with Sharon now, who has been a rock of support for her. Chloe has thrown herself into her studies with a fierce determination. She got early acceptance into Georgetown. She wants to be a prosecutor. Like the one in Mom's case, she told me. Someone who fights for people who can't fight for themselves. My heart swelled with a pride so fierce it almost hurt. The cycle of greed and entitlement would end with her. Her college fund is safe in the trust, where her parents can never touch it again. Sharon and I have become unlikely friends. Two women bonded by the shared trauma of being betrayed by the person we should have been able to trust most in the world. We meet for coffee every Tuesday. We don't talk about Jessica much anymore. Instead, we talk about Chloe's future, about the books we're reading, about the ridiculousness of politics. We talk about healing. Last week, we attended our first meeting for a local support group for elderly victims of financial and emotional abuse. I stood up and told my story. The nods of recognition, the tears in the eyes of the other women in the room. I realized my story, as horrifying as it was not as unique as I thought. I was not alone. I'm sitting in my garden now, the late afternoon sun warm on my face. The roses are in full bloom. I hired a new gardener, a young man with a kind smile who loves his work. The house behind me is quiet, protected by cameras and legal documents that are as strong as steel walls. It is no longer a crime scene or a fortress. It is my home again. My sanctuary. I am safe. I am independent. I am free. I started this story telling you about a failed murder attempt, but it was never really about the poison. It was about the difference between being old and being obsolete. It was about being a woman, a mother, a widow, and refusing to be seen as a victim, a burden, or a bank account with legs. My son and my daughter-in-law made the mistake of thinking my gray hair and wrinkled skin meant I was weak. They mistook my love for blindness and my kindness for stupidity. They learned, at a terrible cost, that a lifetime of experience is its own kind of weapon, and that there is no one more dangerous than a woman who has nothing left to lose. Thank you for listening to my story all the way to the end. It wasn't easy to tell, but it needed to be told. My question for you is this. Have you ever had to draw a line in the sand with your own family? A moment where you had to choose between protecting them and protecting yourself? Let me know in the comments below. Your stories matter. Our voices are the most powerful tool we have against those who would try to silence us. And if this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more stories of survival and justice. You are not alone.